Welcome to Amplify Your Mindset with Ricky Kalmon. Motivational speaker, mindset expert, and celebrity hypnotist Ricky Kalmon has amazed audiences around the world. Kalmon empowers his audience with simple but powerful techniques to boost confidence and belief toward their goals and to exceed their own personal and professional expectations. Each episode features business leaders, motivators, and incredible individuals who share how mindset has contributed to their success. Put awareness and action into your life with the confidence that you'll succeed at the things you want to make happen. Here is Ricky Kalmon.
Hi everyone, it's Ricky Kalmon, and thanks for listening today. I am really excited that we have former NASA astronaut and Space Shuttle commander Mark Polansky. Now, before Mark even says hello, I have to tell you I am so excited because of all the people that I've met in my life, and I continually meet these really incredible people that have done such amazing things and share their stories. Mark is very humble and one of the nicest guys I have ever met. So I'm really excited that he's here. Mark, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks, Ricky. I'm really pleased to be here, and thanks for those kind words.
Absolutely. We've known each other about a year and a half now, just about, and the times that I've met you, you really are, and I mean it, a very humble guy, but you've done some incredible things in your life. I know I'm just going to jump right into it, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Your career started, obviously in the Air Force, correct?
That is correct.
And tell us a little bit about, if you will, a short little, so the listeners can hear a little bit how you went from Air Force to up in space, farther than what you were flying a jet.
Sure. Well, it's one of those things where I grew up during the Apollo era and was inspired when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. And so through a set of circumstances, I wound up going to college at Purdue University, which happened to be the place where both Neil and Gene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon, went to school. So when I was a freshman, I actually got to meet Gene Cernan in a real informal setting at the university, and it got me really thinking about, wow, how do I do this? And so that led me into ROTC, into the Air Force. I was able to go and get a spot as a pilot, not knowing how I was going to perform or if I'd even like it. And fortunately, it all worked out. I started flying fighters and went to test pilot school because back in those days, all the astronauts had that background. And so it was really easy to pattern what is it that I think I need to do if I want to have a shot. So I went to test pilot school and became a test pilot, and I applied to NASA. And this is one of those stories where I did not get in the first time. As a matter of fact, it took me 4 applications to get through and finally accepted. So it was a process that went about, from the first time I applied, about 6 years before I finally got in. And but I did get a job over at NASA, actually not as an astronaut, but as a pilot. And then while I was there, I applied and finally got in.
That's amazing. I mean, it's funny. I was even reading again your bio, and as I'm sitting here reading this, you pretty much had this roadmap since you were young and made it happen. And you're kind of living, you really are living the fantasy of many children out there, kids that look up at space. And I mean, we see these movies and, you see that trailer and you see the kid looking up, I'm going to do this one day. Well, you did it. I mean, you really did it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's wow. When you look at it that way, it's true. And I do a lot of public speaking, and I especially love to speak to young audiences and kids that want to do things. And the main message that I tell them is that somebody's got to do these things. Why not you? And I think that's the approach that I took, which is, hey, somebody's going to be an astronaut. Somebody's going to get to be a ball player. Somebody's going to go to medical school. Why not you if that's what you want to do?
So I'm going to go back a second because I didn't know about that. It took you several times to get in. What kept you going? Obviously there was the drive, was the passion. You were going to make it happen. What did you use to make sure that you weren't going to let doubt say, well, you know what, I've tried, I didn't get in, I just might as well find something else to do?
Well, that's really interesting. And I actually learned a lesson much earlier in my career. And when I was just out of flight school in the Air Force. The first aircraft that they assigned me to was an F-15. At the time, it was the top air-to-air fighter in the service. And I went to training, and I had a phase where I really struggled to go ahead and get through. And I came close to actually not making it all the way through, which in hindsight seems kind of funny. But back then it was pretty stressful. And to make a long story short, I did get through it, and I carried that lesson everywhere with me, which is that I know and I still remember what it was like to almost not get there, and what it takes to get through things. And so I use that in a positive way to remind myself that life doesn't always just hand you what you're looking for. You actually have to work at it. And if you have obstacles and you stumble along the way, you have to go ahead, pick yourself up, and learn from those episodes and say, okay, what is it that I can take away from that so I can be better the next time around? And with the astronaut thing, I took that probably on steroids because it's something I really wanted to do. But the other key lesson that I learned is you have to have a well-rounded portfolio, if you will. So I realized that becoming an astronaut is not an easy thing to do, and there's a really good chance that I'm never going to make it. And so if that's the only thing in life that I'm ever striving for, that I only want to do, and it doesn't work out, well, where does that leave me? So you have to have other options. And the funny thing in this story is that the fourth time when I was getting ready to apply, I said, something I've always wanted to do was get an MBA. I've never had a chance. I've always been a technical guy. So I got into an MBA program at the University of Houston. And of course, that's the year that I got accepted. So,
Wow.
So sadly, I had to turn down a budding career in finance to become an astronaut.
Of course. It's like, in the back of your head, even my parents, you better have a fallback, what are you going to do if this doesn't work out? Well, it's been working out for 30 years. I guess I'm going to stay with this, but you don't know, that's interesting. And it's interesting too, that you almost used the visualization of when you were doing this. Is that fair to say? To help you get through? It wasn't just, I'm going to do it. It sounded like, from what you just told me, you're actually visualizing, certain things to make it happen.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can remember all the details and where I was and the body language and the instructor pilots I was talking to and what I did and how I walked. And I mean, I can remember that whole episode, and I can channel that when it's useful. I can channel that, and it's always good to come back. If nothing else, it helps ground you as well, even after you achieve the things that you're aspiring for and you're successful. You still want to channel that from time to time.
Well, and what you're saying too is what most amazing athletes do, the exact same thing. They've got millions of fans watching. You've got 75, 100,000 fans in the audience, screaming and yelling, and they're channeling, mindset, and they're channeling images, they're channeling focus, they're channeling all the things, what they're doing, but they're just not popping up in the air like you were.
Well, yeah, but you're right. I mean, and so for me, in so many aspects, doing that channelization, visualization, I mean, it's really critical, and it helps the mindset, and it helps prepare one for whatever task that one's trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. I got to ask, because everybody asks a question, regarding it. I'm sure you have some of the most common questions about space. I'm just going to get right to it. We'll get to it, because I'm sure they come up, and, go for it. What's one of the most common things people ask you?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, there are so many, but the most common one is, what is it like to float in space? What's your favorite thing to do in space? What does the Earth look like from space? Any variation thereof. And then some of them go into very technical questions about binary stars and black holes. And I remind them, hey, I'm a pilot, not a physicist. Because that's the thing. If you fly in space, you must be an expert about the Big Bang Theory and all the origins and quarks and neutrinos. And okay, I know a tiny bit about that, but we do have astronauts that were and are astrophysicists, but I'm not there.
You were the engineer. And just so listeners know, you helped, actually with the assembly of the International Space Station.
Yeah, that's right. The 3 missions that I flew were all part of what we call the ISS space station assembly. And my very first mission in 2001 got to take up the United States laboratory named Destiny, which is the keystone for all the research that the U.S. does up on ISS. And then the second one was a pretty big one to go ahead and get the station onto its permanent power grid, if you will, because when we first started assembly, we had to put up interim power system, and then eventually it got put onto the normal grid. And then my last mission, which was actually 9 years ago, was to complete part of the Japanese laboratory complex. So, I mean, it was really exciting to do and know that you're building something that people are now working and living on. And at the same time, I got to see from the beginning, middle, and towards the latter part of assembly. So I got to really see station grow over the years.
Well, I ask this question a lot to leaders. How do you measure success in what you do? And is there a limit to what you do? Because in some people, success is, financial. Some is happiness. Some is gratitude. Some are just the simplicity of just, seeing the results of something regardless of what it is. How have you measured your success?
Wow, that's really so. Of course, on many different levels, we can define what it is that we're measuring that against. And so, from a career perspective, it was actually pretty easy in that I tried to go ahead and break things down. I always try and break things down into somewhat specific goals and objectives. And one of the things that was drilled in me from going into the military was about the fact that, we all have this common goal, and it's the mission, and it's mission and service above self. And so that carried me through my Air Force career. It carried me through my NASA career, and
specifically
with shuttle flights, it was really simple, which is that we were going up there to do a specific job, and within that job, we break it down into various tasks, and we really break things down into minutia, and then you just take those things one at a time, and you measure your success based on, performance against already pre-laid out objectives. And so, we're able to do that. In life, different sets of objectives, right? And so, the things that I try and do and continually try and do, and that I try and instill upon my children, are to go ahead and be responsible, self-serving, functioning adults, and to go ahead and be able to, contribute to society and the greater good. And that certainly is somewhat more nebulous than a specific goal that I'm going to go ahead and finish cleaning the pool today. But, that's something that I try and, measure my success by seeing how we're all doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, accountability is everything. It really is. And I think in what you do, of course, it's a great example. When I have a question, I'm going to go back a little bit about some of the questions you get asked. And, I was wondering too, you're doing what you do, and you've been flying jets and being in the Air Force, but now you're strapped in and you're getting ready to go up into space. And I'm sure there's so much, it's not just, again, people know there's a lot of training behind all this. But what fascinates me is again, and I'm not to be repetitive, it's the mental training. I'm sure you went through hours of mental training and textbook and examples and leadership from others. And then you collaborate your own mental training from there. You have to develop a skill set that you train your brain to get into this. There is no mistakes here. There is no, you can't just guess. You've got to do exactly what you're meant to do and do it right, because not only it's your life is on the line, you're everybody else with you, and there's a lot at stake. Can you share briefly, how did you make that switch? How did you flip that switch when it needed to be flipped? Wow,
just listening to your questions, I'm already visualizing all different aspects of different flights, and it really helps to go ahead and formulate the answer. So the first one is that, and again, I give a lot of credit to my time in the Air Force, and that really helped set the bit and the foundation on a lot of things with regards to priorities, how to compartmentalize everybody has personal issues, problems here and there. And when you go to work and you're doing these things, and I bet athletes are the same way, right? Like you said before, you're out there before a bunch of screaming people who don't care about what's going on in your personal life. They just care that you're out there and you catch the ball or score a goal or whatever it is that you're trying to do. And so, in our world, it's a similar thing. We have to go ahead and perform. And so one of the successful traits that I think that we have is that we're able to compartmentalize and to focus. And then from there, to me, and I try to instill this upon my crewmates, was attention to detail is important. So mentally, you have to go ahead and have stamina the same way that an athlete has stamina. You can't just blow all your mental genius in the first day of a 16-day or a 6-month mission. You're there for the long haul. And so you have to be able to have that attention to detail. And so when I would strap into a vehicle, and I mean, I could just picture it right now, I could smell it. And I literally crawl into the shuttle, which is now in the vertical, and think about your chair, but you rotate it back so that you're lying on your back sitting in a chair, only my chair is about 3 feet off the ground, 4 feet off the ground. So I had to pull myself up into the seat with some assistance, later get strapped in, and now I'm there for about 2.5 hours before the launch. And there are some things that you do during that sequence from time to time, but you actually have a lot of dead time. And so what I would do is that's when I would sit down, you do the, okay, take a deep breath, control your breathing, focus, and then I'd sort of go into this little Zen state, and I'd sit there and start going through what are all the critical things I have to do from the second that the engines light through that first day. And I would tell my crewmates the first day sets the tone for the entire mission. So we have got to get things right. And you just work that. And so mentally, I work that through over and over and over again, what seems like an infinite number of times in a very brief amount of time. And that's what, for me, helps me prepare for what's about to happen very soon.
Okay, so I'm sitting here listening to this, and I'm actually feel like I'm there with you. I mean, it was like literally the perfect description. I felt like I was going through a movie, seriously, of you describing every little detail of that. But the unique thing is halfway through that transition of the story, I started to realize, wow, all the things that you just described can be used in everyday life. No matter what business you're in, what type of level of career you're in, corporate ladder you're in, setting goals, visualizing, making sure that what you're about to do is important, you're on task, you're not distracted, and you've got your mission in mind. You think about that, though. I mean, somebody even driving a truck, somebody, in surgery, a lawyer, a doctor. I mean, it doesn't really matter as long as you use the simplicity of what you just said in your career.
Oh, no. I mean, I absolutely agree. There's nothing special about it. I really don't think. I do think that if you're able to break it down that way and just think about it, then yeah, I mean, everybody should be able to go ahead and use that to their betterment in whatever they're doing. The one thing I do believe it takes is you have to have a little bit of discipline. And so somewhere along the way, you have to say, okay, I'm going to do these things. It doesn't come easy. It certainly comes easier a little bit later because you get more used to it and it's routine. But at the beginning, it takes a little bit of work. It takes some commitment. And so, what I tell everybody is, you only get out what you're willing to put in. And there are some folks that they're looking for the easy cookbook approach to life. And, for the most part, I'm not a believer in that. I believe that, you have to put in the time. You got to put in the effort.
Absolutely. And it's repetition. I mean, repetition creates a habit, and then it becomes literally an automatic response. You create a muscle memory or a mind memory of the routine, and you become really good at it. It kicks in. You flip the switch, and boom, you're there. I mean, like you just said.
That's absolutely right.
You said, I mean, it was fascinating to me when you said, I can smell literally getting in to the craft. I mean, you literally, that memory of that is engraved in you. And not only is the memory of the smell bringing forth focus and concentration. It literally helped kick you in to the gear to where you needed to be. I mean, that's something that I use as an example to people all the time. And they look at me and they go, well, you're going to just tell me a smell is going to, provoke a feeling, an emotion, a readiness, but it does. And it did for you. And you set that up. I mean, like, wow. I mean, I was like, I couldn't believe you just said that, because that's such a great example. We use smells. Smells are sometimes one of our strongest senses, but it's also creates such an idea of a memory. And so, wow, that was amazing. Very, very cool.
No, I mean, well, for me, it's really cool. And I could, and I'm closing my eyes right now while I'm speaking with you, and I could, if you needed me to, and I know you don't want to, but I could go ahead and I could remember any particular moment on any one of my flights, and I could remember what it would be like to be floating, to doing some work, to the sights, to the sounds, to the smell, and I could do that. But while I'm saying that, and I bet you would agree with this, the other thing that I can do is I could be right here working around the house and doing something, and I could go ahead and have some smell somewhere, and it takes me to back when I was 10 years old doing something somewhere.
Absolutely.
Just like it doesn't take much for anybody, and whether it's a song that you just happen to listen to differently today than you did yesterday, or just something, and you go, oh yeah, all of a sudden it just takes you back in time. It's amazing.
Yeah, and these examples are so simple, but it's so true, and yet at the same time, many people think it can't be that simple. You're going to tell me, a thought is going to literally change the way I think about things, but it does, and it does. And again, you trained your brain by the smell of of getting into the craft, and it changed your perspective, and you're able to still use it every single day. I mean, I use example, just, you think of certain smells of the holidays, it brings back memories of, being with certain people, and it gets
Right.
you in the frame of mode. So yeah, it is amazing to me. I mean, in my years of speaking and teaching people about mindset, every day, I learn something new. I hear great examples from people like yourself, and it's just so aspiring to hear that, to hear how much it resonates. It's really amazing. And now in your professional life, you're using some of the same skills every single day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. That's really fantastic. This has been really fascinating, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to spend it with me and share these stories and inspire others as well. And it's like that childhood fantasy. We watch movies and we see things that just don't look real, and how these people accomplish these incredible things. But the reason why you accomplished it, you had a goal in mind. And you did it. You made it happen, and that's fascinating. It really is. And you're humble about it. Again, I'm going to say it. You're very grateful for the opportunities that you were given, and you did these things so well. It's awesome. It really is.
Oh, well, thanks. I mean, that's really kind. But one of the reasons that if you want to consider me humble, one of the reasons you get to be that way is. Especially in this business, you look at all the people that did not get selected, that will never get selected, and if you're honest with yourself, you look at a bunch of these people and you go, wow, how the heck did I get in and they didn't? And you realize that there are probably a lot more people who would have been great astronauts who never got the chance than there are people that actually got to do this. And so it helps remind you, and I like reminding myself, and if I have any problems with that, my wife helps remind me that, you got to do special things, but don't think that means that you're really special. You worked hard, you got these things, but basically just don't get a big head. And I'm a big believer in that. There are a lot of really successful people out there who would have loved to have done what I got to do 3 times and never will. And it's just the way it goes. But it doesn't mean that I'm better than anyone or that they failed. Life is just kind of funny with how things work out certain ways. But I'm a big believer that, things do happen for a reason, and there's some fate that's woven in there, and some luck. But so yeah.
So I have a question
for you.
for
It's a long-winded way, Ricky, of saying don't get a fat head.
Absolutely. I have a question for you. You can share this if you want. So now that you're, in the private sector and, being up in space now, 3 times on a shuttle mission, when you watch movies, and they're movies, can you put on a spectator, a layman's hat, or do you find yourself watching and going, that's not the way we did it, or that is the way we did it. Very nice job. Is it hard to turn that off? I mean, do you get critical, or do you watch it and you're just can you be entertained? I mean, I'm kind of curious. You and I've had some conversations about some of the movies in the past in space. So it depends on what you want to share. I'm just kind of curious.
Oh no, I'm happy to share, and it's really funny. So I have to say that I've mellowed out with regards to that, but in the early days. But I used to go ahead and be hypercritical, and the story that I will share is I was watching the movie Armageddon years ago, and we were at the theater, and it was myself, another astronaut, good friend of mine, and my wife, and the 3 of us are over there. And my buddy Ed and I are just going, oh, can you believe that? Oh, you can't dock like that. There's no way. Oh, artificial gravity. What the heck are they doing? And finally, my wife, she'd had enough. And she said, stop it, you guys. It's a movie. and then I thought about that. And so I remember that all the time going forward. Anytime I start looking at these things, I will always look at movies about space and astronauts and try and sit there and decide whether I think where they're taking liberties and where they're okay. But I'll still be able to enjoy it because I will always recall my wife saying it's a movie. And I also remember talking to some folks, that have been into that business, and they go, hey guys, we're not making a documentary here. We're trying to entertain people. So it's okay to take some liberties with the rules or the laws of science.
Mark, thanks again for your time today and for being on the show. For more information on Mark Polansky, I'll leave it on my website and information in this podcast. If you get a chance to see Mark live, you will not be disappointed. He is an incredible speaker with great stories of inspiration.
Thanks, Ricky. I mean, it's been a real pleasure. Again, just a plug. You're a great guy. It was wonderful to get to meet you some time ago and to now be friends. So I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. Likewise. This is Ricky Kalmon, and thank you for listening to Amplify Your Mindset. Please subscribe and tune in to the next episode.
You have been listening to Amplify Your Mindset with Ricky Kalmon. For more information on Ricky Kalmon's corporate and personal development programs, visit rickykalmon.com.